NXT, NXT, NXT. The WWE's so-called developmental has arguably been outperforming the so-called big leagues of its main roster brethren for years now, but 2018 truly hammered this fact home. Month after month, and seemingly even week after week at times this year, NXT was putting on Match of the Year candidates to rival any promotion in the world, the in-ring product being leaps beyond that of the main WWE roster. I love you, Big Paul. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic.com, and here are the 10 best NXT matches of 2018. Join us! Number 10, Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong versus Trent Seven and Tyler Bate, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 4. NXT UK's prime talent and inaugural UK champion Tyler Bate and the UK's resident daddy Trent Seven got their chance on the grand stage of an NXT TakeOver the night before SummerSlam at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 4, when their rivalry with the Undisputed Era came to a head in a near 20-minute show-opening match. It was a bout that fed off the long-term rivalry between the two teams, one which included Moustache Mountain taking the tag titles from the Undisputed Era on an NXT UK show in June 2 months earlier, and a rematch in which the Undisputed Era regained the belts in one of the best NXT TV matches of the year. The wrestling itself was simply phenomenal, with Bate hitting a Cesaro-like swing on Strong while carrying O'Reilly on his back, then hitting a German on Strong with O'Reilly still hanging from his shoulders at one stage. They even teased revisiting a spot from earlier in the rivalry where the towel was thrown in by Bate to save Seven, only this time in reverse, but Seven just couldn't do it. Ultimately, the Mountain would lose anyway, with Trent taking the pinfall after several of the best tag team near falls in any company all year, ending an outstanding match which sits just inside our top 10 for the year at the number 10 spot. Number 9, Velveteen Dream versus Ricochet, NXT TakeOver Chicago. What do you get when you put two young, mental, and seemingly invincible entertainers in a match together? A delightful spot fest, of course. And the one that Ricochet and Velveteen Dream offered at TakeOver Chicago was the stuff of spot-friendly dreams. The acrobatics on offer in this match were absolutely fantastic, with some of the spots being awe-inspiring to say the least, but the bigger moments of this match were stitched together by some technical sequences and a well-controlled pace that ensured the match never seemed to be too much too often. At important moments, Dream and Ricochet invited the audience to feel for their struggles in the ring and their characters' struggles and motivations in the story, elevating the material beyond that of a spot fest and into a Match of the Year candidate for the WWE as a whole. The most brutal-looking spot of the match was without a doubt a superplex from the apron, over the top rope and to the floor from Dream to Ricochet, the ringside mat bump still being considered one of the most painful to take, while the near fall of the match came when Ricochet hit Dream with his own finishing moves back-to-back with a level of technical grace only he could achieve. Altogether, it was a phenomenal and action-packed match about a young stud looking to prove himself with one of the best wrestlers in the entire world. Number 8, Tommaso Ciampa versus Johnny Gargano, last man standing at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 4. Just as Omega Okada dominated many people's top 10 match of the year lists in 2017, the trilogy of TakeOver matches between Ciampa and Gargano in NXT is going to make many a person's top 10 list this year. The first to make our list is the NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 4 last man standing match for the NXT title, the culmination of the villain's journey and the end of the brave hero Johnny. What was supposed to be a triple threat match evolved into a last man standing match due to the real-life injury and kayfabe attack on Aleister Black, bringing the third in the series between Ciampa and Gargano forward, but ensuring a darker twist to Gargano's character that would see him embrace his most hateful side in an attempt to finally vanquish the most evil force in his life. The problem? He couldn't, and he was instead motivated by revenge. Revenge even more so than the title, which was a sort of prop with this one. With all of that going into and coming out of this third installment, the now big money feud of Ciampa and Gargano was missing the good guy versus bad guy dynamic, with both characters adopting something in the middle from time to time during this match. This created a greater sense of intrigue in the characters, but lessened allegiances, arguably reducing the enjoyment in this one compared to the other two, but still making for a sensational match in its own right. Number 7, Tommaso Ciampa versus Velveteen Dream, NXT TakeOver War Games. Coming towards the conclusion of 2018, the War Games undercard match between Tommaso Ciampa and Velveteen Dream over the coveted NXT title was rich evidence as to how much the Dream had developed over the course of the year, and a phenomenal match to boot. Dream's challenging of Ciampa seemed to be the result of convenience laid out by the other main event talent wrestling in their own feuds and across the show's other marquee matches, but it was a match sold by the pair as well as it possibly could have been. Dream, the less experienced and flamboyant superstar, versus Ciampa, the experienced ring-hand professional wrestler. It was an interesting dynamic, and one which lent itself to the match being able to explore different ideas. And it delivered on all fronts. Ultimately, it was the experience edge which gave Ciampa the upper hand and then the victory, keeping Velveteen Dream strong in defeat as a man gaining the skills and experience necessary to make it to the very top. Number 6, Aleister Black versus Johnny Gargano, NXT TakeOver War Games. Ranked only just ahead of its fellow War Games match is the encounter between Aleister Black and Johnny Gargano, but in truth, these matches could exchange places, they're that similar in quality. This match, which closed out the rivalry between Black and Gargano that was started by Johnny secretly taking out Aleister out of a planned triple threat match in the summer, was phenomenally told from a story and character standpoint, Gargano's turn to the dark side in pursuit of redemption against Tommaso Ciampa being a clear through line for the match, Black acting as a spiritual demon there to punish Gargano for losing sight of the light. Gargano cleverly wrestled as if a man who had researched his opponent and seemed a step ahead because of it, answering each of Black's spots with an offensive move or reversal that took the former NXT champion out of his comfort zone. But as the story progressed, Gargano's own arrogance left space for Black to become dominant once more, the composed manner in which Black exposed of Gargano offering a fitting end to this feud, this portion of Gargano's larger story, and the match as a whole, hitting storytelling out of the park and being almost faultless from a technical standpoint too. Number 5, Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong versus Trent Seven and Tyler Bate, NXT 11th of July 2018. This tag title match stands out on this list for 2 reasons. The first being that it was a match on ordinary NXT week-to-week TV and not a takeover, the second being that it lasted around 10 minutes, which is pretty short in comparison to everything else on this list. It's like your girlfriend always said, it's about what you do with it that counts. This NXT encounter was one with a frantic pace that acted as a sort of best bits medley at the beginning of the match and a grueling, heart-wrenching emotional piece by the end. The crutch of the action focused on Strong and O'Reilly picking apart Trent Seven's leg following a nasty bump on the ring steps. The entire match was built around it, with Bate getting the hot tag for only a brief run in the ring before the action returned to Trent's developing injury. Strong and O'Reilly, proficient in submissions, cranked up the pressure on Seven as the match went on until Bate, anxiously reaching for a tag in his team's corner of the ring, couldn't watch the pain go on for any longer and threw in the towel. Such was the story told and the talent used to tell it that you felt all of the anguish Bate felt in throwing in the towel and all of the disappointment Seven must have felt for not being trusted to look after himself. It was a moment they'd play on in their later TakeOver match, and undoubtedly the most noteworthy story beat in their fantastic summer feud, not to mention the end of the Mountains tag title reign. Number 4, Tommaso Ciampa versus Johnny Gargano in a street fight, NXT TakeOver Chicago. The second match in the trilogy of excellent Ciampa and Gargano matches offered something new to the formula, the NXT title. This street fight saw the pair go above and beyond the call of duty in pursuit of stealing the show and topping their previous effort. While the latter was something they wouldn't quite be able to achieve, steal the show they did, with both guys offering a brutal exchange that never lost sight of the rivalry and why the match was happening in the first place. Never did Ciampa or Gargano pander to the crowd or do something to steal the show. They simply managed to do so by presenting the most realistic rendition of a modern-day street fight possible, with the aggression in the small things like Irish whips and takedowns seeming heightened in comparison to the usual fare, the brutality of their weapon spots therefore seeming like powerful shots at the end of prolonged physical and emotional beatings, or as last-gasp efforts at regaining the upper hand. The use of a crutch was a particularly well-constructed throwback, reminding us of Ciampa's own struggles with injury and how his character came to blame Gargano for them, while Gargano's reluctance to let Ciampa leave on a stretcher offered glimpses of the darker turn that was to come for the character. Ultimately, it would be wit rather than bravery that would win the day, with Ciampa hitting a draping DDT on the bare wood of the ring to retain the championship despite tapping to the Gargano escape earlier in the sequence. Number 3, Killian Dane versus Lars Sullivan versus Adam Cole versus Ricochet versus Velveteen Dream versus EC3 in a 6-man ladder match at NXT TakeOver New Orleans. When NXT went and signed up half of the world's greatest independent wrestlers, it was like Triple H was formulating a super squad for some sort of coming Infinity Infinity War that we didn't know about yet. So when NXT TakeOver New Orleans was scheduled for the night before WrestleMania, he made sure his newfound favorites were front and center, with the inaugural North American Championship match pitting 6 of NXT's most promising talents against one another in a ladder match that would tear the roof off the joint. Acting as the TakeOver match debut for both EC3 and the world-renowned Ricochet, as well as the belt itself, this ladder match did everything in its power to ensure that everything got over. Lars Sullivan played the destructive beast of the group, pouring off ladder strikes and his opponents teaming up on him, while Killian Dane showed more agility than anyone could ever imagine. Velveteen Dream was highlighted arguably more than at any point before, while Ricochet looked a star from the minute he took to his feet for the first time. EC3 had arguably the roughest looking bumps of the entire match, while Adam Cole, Bay, won the damn thing. We enjoyed every single one of its 31 minutes of action, and most importantly, everyone got over. Number 2, Andrade Cien Almas vs Johnny Gargano, NXT TakeOver Philadelphia. The January TakeOver match between Almas and Gargano for the NXT title was the first WWE match in almost 7 years to be awarded the heralded 5-star rating by Dave Meltzer, and would have been the #1 match of the year in almost any other WWE year this century had it not happened in 2018. This modern title classic, yes, it's already a classic, get with the program, ran for over 30 minutes and didn't at any point seem to be going on for too long. Almas, who at this point had perfected his heel persona alongside his new-ish manager Zelina Vega, played off the ultimate underdog babyface of Johnny Gargano to offer the most traditional of heel and babyface dynamics to a title match that was fought with an entirely modern combative wrestling style. Both men operate on an almost excruciating level of snugness as regards to their strikes and high-impact slams, and there seemed to be barely a foot put in the wrong place for this modern epic. Everything here was so good, and so new school that it rivaled the very best on offer at New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom, which is something we had almost forgotten to be possible from a WWE event, and maybe even an NXT event. Gargano and Almas had everybody talking about their potentially year-stealing feats at TakeOver Philly, but they didn't quite take home the gold. Number 1, Johnny Gargano vs Tommaso Ciampa in an unsanctioned match at NXT TakeOver New Orleans. Gargano and Ciampa, 2 stars brought in on the off chance that perhaps they might make a half-decent NXT tag team, had been elevating their game for years, and over WrestleMania weekend, they made the biggest name for themselves that either of them have ever done up until that point, earning Match of the Weekend status and proving their talents to a worldwide viewing audience in what was a battle that was, well, it was pure art. Long-term friends behind the scenes, Gargano and Ciampa made for even better rivals on NXT television, their route to this match lasting nearly a year following their heartbreaking split in May of 2017. With Gargano coming off the back of arguably the match of his career with Almas in January, he and Ciampa clearly had intentions to up that once more, and with the unsanctioned match gimmick attached, they were afforded room to go above and beyond the traditional wrestling match of Gargano's previous 5-star encounter, incorporating weaponry that not only looked brutal, but was also often used as a reminder of moments in the pair's saga throughout NXT together. Wrestling for 37 minutes, the intensity rose to such a level that a submission win from the now more victorious and mentally cracked Johnny Gargano seemed like the most fitting end. His earning of a spot back on the NXT roster coming at a cost to his body and his mind. The match acting as a defining point in his character's journey from purity to something far more sinister. So that's our list. I'm looking forward to the comments section on this one. You can follow me on Twitter here. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.